the internet. Welcome to Constant Science. I'm Don from Explosions Incorporated. So last week, I went to see the new Christopher Nolan movie, Interstellar, which you may have heard of, because it got a pretty big marketing campaign, and it's made by Christopher Nolan, who directed the Dark Knight trilogy and Inception. 4 movies I think are all pretty damn great in their own ways. And Interstellar was also pretty good, and I just wanted to talk a little bit today about just one of the scientific issues I had with the movie. Overall, most of the science was pretty solid, and I know that Neil deGrasse Tyson has done a more thorough examination of it, and of course he's much more of an expert than I am, so you should probably check out his video as well. And I'm just going to talk about one thing too. And one of my other favorite astronomers, Phil Plait, has gone on record saying he was disappointed in the movie, and that's fair enough. I mean, people are going to like it, people are going to dislike it, but what I'm going to say is I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a really enjoyable movie despite a couple of issues. It's not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a lot of fun. It was a great kind of piece of hopeful science fiction in the Arthur C. Clarke vein of just getting out there and exploring and seeing what's going on. And maybe you don't find all the answers you want, but at least cool stuff happens. Now, past this point, there will be spoilers, okay? Not major ones for the plot, but there are going to be spoilers because I have to talk about something that happens at about the midway point of the movie. You've been warned. So about halfway through the movie, which by the way is about Matthew McConaughey saving the human race by going through a wormhole to explore a solar system in a new galaxy. I know, I said it was good, and you have to trust me on that. He was good and true detective. So anyway, about halfway through the movie, him and Catwoman and one other astronaut whose name I can't remember at all, they end up in this solar system through the wormhole, and they're going to land on a planet that's really, really close to the black hole at the center of the system. This introduces Einstein's theory of general relativity, which is one of his 2 theories of relativity. The first one being special relativity, which studies things moving at very high velocities and how that affects mass and the passage of time. And general relativity, the one we're going to talk about today, studies objects and their proximity to sources of gravity, which also affects the flow of time. So the conceit here in the movie is that if they land on this planet, it's so close to a massive source of gravity that there's going to be massive time dilation. The flow of time is going to speed up relative to an external reference point. Now that's important for relativity. There is no such thing as an absolute reference point. You can measure somebody else's time by only using your own, and they can only measure yours by using their own. Everything is relative in space and time out there. So anyway, if they spend 1 hour on this planet, 7 years will pass on Earth. And so it's this dramatic tension where can they make it down and explore what they need to explore to find out if it's habitable in time to get up before the human race has just kind of gone extinct on its own because Earth is a pile of crap at this point in the movie. So the science behind it is sound. The basic idea is cool, and it leads to some interesting dramatic tension. But the way it plays out isn't great because, okay, let's say we've got 2 bodies. And, okay, here's the black hole, and let's say that there's a planet orbiting really closely to this, and you can't see that planet. But somebody lands on this planet. If you get close enough to the black hole to land on the planet, you're really close to the source of gravity, which means that the flow of time close to that source of gravity is going to be different from the flow of time, let's say, on this planet over here, further away from that source of gravity. That's basically what general relativity says. For every hour, let's say, close to the black hole, 1 year passes on planet Orange over here. Which also means that for every 1 year on planet Orange, 1 hour passes on somebody who is close to the black hole. That's what we mean by relativity. Somebody over here is going to be watching these people moving around in super high speed, and somebody over here is going to be watching these people move around in super slow motion. Pretty simple. And that's the basic idea behind the scene in the movie. That's the conceit they're working with. And it's accurate as far as it goes, except they had to complicate it. They did not use a basic 2-body comparison, where you had people on the planet close to the black hole versus people on Earth far away from such a strong source of gravity, not experiencing the flow of time the same way. They introduced a 3rd body. The astronaut, whose name I forget, stayed on their orbiting station when they went down, and when they got down there, shit went wrong, and they stayed way longer than they meant to, and by the time they got back up to the station, 20-odd years had passed on Earth, and it was because McConaughey's daughter had grown up from 10, and now she's in her 30s, and she's so angry that he never came home, and it was kind of neat. I mean, it was definitely good drama. But the science didn't work out because when they got back to the station, the guy they had left behind had also aged by 20 odd years. And it was this dramatic beat, I guess they were going for. Well, you left him up here and it wasn't your fault, but he was alone except for an android, not even an android, just a robot for 20 some years. And look, he's got cabin fever and he's kind of weird and he's walking around in a robe and slippers. So I know why they did it. They wanted that beat, except that dramatic beat didn't actually affect the plot or the script at all past that point. It just went on to get ignored. So there really wasn't any reason to ignore the fact that that's not what happens. Okay, here is Gravity Zone, and everything inside Gravity Zone experiences time differently in exactly the same way from everything outside Gravity Zone. General relativity, I guess what I'm saying, isn't binary. You don't cross a threshold based on the strength of the gravitational pull, and then suddenly everything outside that threshold experiences time differently. It scales the closer you get to the source of gravity, which means that we had people on a planet very close to a black hole experiencing time at a rate of 1 hour for every 7 years on Earth. We have a guy orbiting that same planet very, very close to them, very, very close to the black hole, very, very far away from Earth, which means he would have experienced time very, very closely to their experience on the planet. If he's in low planetary orbit, he's only a couple of 100 miles away. Compare that to the probably millions of light years that he is from Earth. There's no way he's going to experience 7 years for every 1 hour on the planet. He's too close to that source of gravity, too. He would have aged more than McConaughey and Catwoman on the planet, but far less than the people far away on Earth. He would have fallen somewhere in between them, but far, far, far closer to the people who are actually on the planet, because they're all very close to the same source of gravity. And you know what? Come to think of it, they would have been experiencing a time difference from Earth the second they got into that system, because the closer they got to that black hole, the more the flow of time would change for them relative to what's on Earth. It's not just that they land on a planet and suddenly time changes. Every second they're in that system, more than 1 second is going to be passing on Earth, which is another thing that went ignored for dramatic effect. When you use an atomic clock, you can measure time dilation between the International Space Station and the surface of the Earth, because the Earth puts out gravity, and the ISS is a little further away from that gravity than those of us here on the surface. When you use atomic clocks, you can measure a minuscule but measurable time dilation between airplanes 35,000 feet above the surface of the Earth and the surface of the Earth. And that time dilation is different from what is measured on the ISS. In fact, in 2010, there was an experiment where they actually managed to measure time dilation with as little as 1 meter of difference above the surface of the Earth. Relativity is not binary. The closer you are to a source of gravity, the more it will change your experience of time compared to somebody who is further away. The time dilation changes, not because you crossed a threshold past which it changes, but because you are inching in bits and pieces by nanometers closer to the source of gravity. So what should have happened in the movie is they got back up to the station and the guy was like, well, you were down there for a few hours. That really sucks because 20 odd years have passed on Earth while we were dicking around here on this planet that, spoiler alert, is covered in water and sucks and it kills everybody who's ever landed on it, which was the one person who went there before them. It still would have provided plenty of drama because the real drama came from Matthew McConaughey's age difference, or rather similarity, to his daughter who spent 20 odd years growing up without him and never quite got over it at that point in the movie. That's where the real drama came from. So having that weird little beat where the astronaut had aged 20 odd years too, it just seemed like an unnecessary reason to ignore a basic reality of general relativity, that he was almost as close to the gravity as they were, and so his experience of time would have been very little different from their own, and very, very different from Earth's, just like theirs was. So anyway, you should go see that movie. It was a great thing to see on a big screen, and heck, you may not like it, but that's okay. You don't have to like it. Just don't come and complain to me if you don't like it, because I warned you may not like it. I thought it was pretty cool, though. As always, ideas for topics, leave them down here in the comments. I still don't have a good sign-off, so I'm just going to say this is Don from Explosions Incorporated. Thanks for watching Constant Science, and I'll see you next time.